Welcome to another amazing episode of Raising Private Money. I'm Jay Conner, the Private Money Authority. This is the podcast where we normally talk about how to raise private money for your real estate deals, but we're going to take a little detour today and talk about a very, very hot topic, and that is LinkedIn. How you can use LinkedIn to actually grow your wealth, your connections, and make a lot of money, to tell you the truth. Well, my guest today, if you were actually to ask him what is his superpower, my best guess would be he'd be saying being resilient. He knows how to get back up after being knocked down. And I tell you, he has been through the ringer, as they say, on multiple occasions. He's experienced the high of highs by selling his very first business a few years ago for $1 million. And then shortly after that, becoming $1.5 million in liability debt only 6 years later. And so going through all that, he actually lost a house in the process of reinventing himself, if you will. And then to, as they say, claim the slate, he had really no other choice but to finalize a personal bankruptcy back in 2016. So here's the thing about my guest. He never saw any of these experiences as setbacks. Instead, he saw them and looked at them as the foundations of his comeback story. Well, what's his comeback story? Well, it's got a lot to do with LinkedIn. LinkedIn became his outlet for moving himself and his business forward because he was seeking and looking for three things. He was looking for connection, he was looking for community, and he was looking for impact. And as it's turned out, he found all three with LinkedIn, and his life and business have never been the same since. And with his very strategic approach and systematic ways of using LinkedIn, when you do it his way, your life and business will never be the same as well. Well, he is passionate about showing people how to grow their wealth through the means of LinkedIn. And some of his accomplishments: he's an award-winning online marketer. He's a 3 times best-selling author, top podcaster. I was on his podcast very, very recently. He's a speaker as well. He is the go-to specialist when it comes to converting traffic, establishing connections, creating income, and building personal brands on LinkedIn. You see, he has helped thousands experience explosive business and monetary growth. In just a moment, you're going to meet my very, very special guest, Mr. Scott Aaron, right after this.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
Well, hello there, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Jay. With that intro, I better deliver today, because that was those seem like some big shoes that I need to fill, but I'm going to do my best to do so.
Well, I know you can fill them, because I was on your podcast not long ago, and I was really enjoyed being on there. And it was because of that I said, Scott, I got to get you on Raising Private Money. Even though we're not going to talk much about private money, I know your topic is very, very interesting, very intriguing. You hear people out there talk about using LinkedIn, but you just don't really, or I don't really talk to that many people that have really, got the kind of experience and the success. And, when I said there at the beginning, being resilient, I would probably say that is probably one of the top traits or character traits that someone needs to be an entrepreneur, period. Not just in real estate investing, but really being any kind of entrepreneur, because you are going to be, kicked around, and you're going to fall down. So first, I want to speak to your mindset. How is it? What advice can you give on sharing with the audience? How do you have the mindset to keep that positive outlook, and when tough times come along, and how do you keep yourself from just going over in the corner and taking a box of tissues and sitting in a puddle?
Well, the I've done that. I've definitely taken that box of tissues into a corner because sometimes you get knocked down. And I think for me, resiliency is something that's in my DNA. It's something that I experienced at a very young age, and a lot of the things that I went through, I don't wish them upon people, but I think every single person goes through life and will have to face adversities. And it's from those adversities, no matter how big or how small, it's about the comeback story. Um, I always tell people that any successful person that you follow, that you're engaged with, that you really look up to, I can guarantee you every single one of those people has had pitfalls in their life. They've had obstacles they've had to overcome. They've had U-turns and divots on the fairway, so to speak, that they've had to work through. That's just the way that life is. You know, Darren Hardy, who's one of my favorite authors, he's most famous for the book The Compound Effect, but one of his other best books is called The Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster. And he talks about that that's what entrepreneurship is. It's a roller coaster ride. When you get to that amusement park and you're waiting in line for that roller coaster and it's your turn, what's the first thing that you do when you sit down? You grab that safety harness and you pull it all the way down and lock it in, because there's going to be twists, there's going to be turns, you're going to be shot out of a cannon, you're going to be coming to a screeching halt. You may even go backwards or flipped upside down. And for me, where resiliency really came into place for me, you know, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. So I jokingly tell people I've been psychologically unemployable since day one. I started in the fitness industry back in 1998, beginning of 1999, through, I would say, a not so pleasant family issue. My father, also a seasoned entrepreneur, still is to this day, made some bad business decisions, and actually it landed him in federal prison for 2.5 years. And this is when I was a sophomore in college. I was 19 years old. My dad still is a big fitness buff. And in the 6 months between being convicted and obviously getting sentenced, he had to leave something to the family, namely myself, my mother, and my sister, as a means of revenue and income so we could survive. But unbeknownst to me, this fitness club that he took over and bought was going to be turned over to me when he went away 6 months later. Now, when that situation arose, I was handed the keys as a teenager. And my dad said, "You're the man of the house now. You got to take the baton and you got to run with it." I didn't see that as being dealt a bad hand. I just saw it as what it was. My dad's in federal prison. I need to support my mom and my sister. I got to really envelop myself in this fitness industry and really become what this is. But I learned a lot along the way. I learned about being resilient. I learned about being myself, and I still have the letter to this day. My father gave me this about a year ago. He gave me a letter that I wrote him because I had the first letter. And basically, in the letter I wrote him, I was upset because I felt like I could not fill his shoes. His shoes were too big. I could not be him. And I couldn't do the things that he was able to do. And he gave me the letter that he wrote me. And this letter, it still brings a tear to my eye when I read it, because in the letter, my dad wrote, he goes, in my years of being your father, he goes, "I've always told you to always be your own person and never try to be anyone else other than yourself." And he goes, "And that's what this situation calls for." He goes, "I don't want you to be me. I don't want you to try to be me." He goes, "I want you to be Scott and Scott only." And I think that was the reassurance that I needed at that time to give me the confidence that I could do this. And again, as you mentioned in your intro, there were a lot of ups and downs. We had two gyms. I sold them for $1 million when I was 24 years old. That, 6 years later, when I was just about to turn 30, I was now, $1.5 million in liability debt. My father and I, we had a falling out. It led to that. That was the culmination. We didn't talk for nearly a year and a half when I asked him to leave the gym so I can take it over myself. And to your point, Jay, yeah, I had to file for personal bankruptcy just about 9 years ago. But I remember walking down the hallway with my business attorney, and thank God LinkedIn came into my life when it did in 2013, because I had a growing coaching and consulting practice outside of the gym. And I'll never forget, I was standing in the Philadelphia courthouse. The paperwork was signed. Basically, I got the stamp of approval that I was approved for the personal bankruptcy. And this was July of 2016. It would take about 2.5 to 3 months to go through officially, which was October. And I'm walking down this long hallway, and my attorney puts his arm around me and he says, "Now you can go live your life." And it was such a freeing moment for me, because not only was I living in this shadow of my father's dream was the fitness industry, but I was living in the shadow of all of the things that followed him that were ended up on my shoulders because of this. So I think all of those things culminated in understanding that resiliency comes along with entrepreneurship. And I love sharing my story because I want people to understand that you are going to get knocked down. And Les Brown says this all the time. He goes, "It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down." He said, "If you can look up, you can get up." And no matter how many times I've been knocked down, I've been able to see the blue sky above me, which has given me the permission to stand back up and keep moving forward.
As you are sharing your story there, Scott, I'm reminded of the quote, "Success is a horrible teacher." Success is a horrible teacher. We learn those important lessons in the low of lows, if you will. So, yes, you've been resilient, that's in your DNA. But when you are, really going through some of these difficulties, what are some of the big takeaways and lessons learned that, you really got out of those experiences?
Well, I would say the big thing is having a positive outlook. So I've always been a glass half full type of person. But the other thing that I would say is that I live in the solution, but I don't live in the problem. And what I found was, if I chose the route of living in the problem, I would be drowning in my sorrows, and I would be keeping the car in neutral, and I wouldn't be able to move forward. But if I focused on this concept of, all right, this is what's going on, here's the problem, there's got to be a solution for it. And Jay, there is. And I can positively, and I can affirm that no matter what problem someone is facing in their life right now, some other person has faced that same problem, and you know what? There's probably a solution for it. So no matter what was kind of thrown my way, I had to maintain that positive outlook and that positive mindset that there is a solution to every problem. Now, there's a secondary mindset shift that I had to make. I also had to put my pride aside. A lot of people will let their ego get in the way of getting to the next level of their business. And I remember one of my business coaches told me very early on, he goes, "Scott, you never want your ego to be so big that you can't fit in front of a doorway, or you can't fit through a doorway." So I always made sure that I always checked my ego at the door before I walked through. Because here's the thing, one of the things that helped me most mindset wise is understanding that it's okay to ask for help. So many people wear this badge of honor of, prideful that, I'm going to grind it out, and I'm going to do it myself, and I'm going to figure this out on my own no matter how long it takes me. Now, I love your quote because, success is actually not the best teacher. Failure is. The failure is where you learn the lessons. But I also found myself never hesitating to ask for help, because there's strength in that. And I think people have this mindset that if they reach out to someone for help, right? Think about all the people that attend your seminars, all the people that read your book and come to work with you. They're not afraid to ask for help, because you know what? They're seeing Jay as the successful person that he is, and the business that he's running. You know what? Why am I going to spend all these hours, days, weeks, months, years trying to figure it out and continue to fail and not fail quick enough, when you know what? I can trim the fat, and I can reach out for some help, and I can find exactly what needs to get done. So for me, it was having that mindset shift of understanding that there was a solution to every single problem that I was having, and never being afraid to reach out for help.
It's amazing how much we have in common, Scott. One of which being, I remember sharing my story on your show when I was cut off from the banks. And the first thing I asked myself was, who do I know that can help me with my problem, right? So I can relate to exactly what you're saying. So you were handed the keys to the business that your dad had there. And then you went through the difficulty of times. You grew from that. And then you got into LinkedIn.
Yeah.
How and where and how did the LinkedIn thing start and come across to where you've come today to be the LinkedIn expert?
So after we sold the first two gyms, we spent about a year, and that was in 2003. 2004, opened the last gym, and that's the gym that kind of took me from millionaire to negative millionaire, so to speak. Uh, and I was your prototypical personal trainer, sports nutritionist. If I wasn't working, I wasn't earning. And I was literally working every hour that I could. I was working 6.5 days a week. I was doing about 70 to 80 hours. Now, I was making six figures as a personal trainer, but that's not to say much because that meant the more money I made, the less time I had. It wasn't until 2012, in all honesty, when my son was born. He's 12 now, that things really kind of shifted for me perspective wise because I realized that it wasn't just about me anymore. And I always remembered my father was so present in my life. You know, he worked very, very hard, but my mom had certain ground rules in the house. We would sit down and have dinner together every single night. And my dad was my coach in sports. He was at all my sporting events, even if he wasn't the coach. And I wanted to be that for my son. I wanted to learn and take that and then obviously be that for my son. And when I kind of took a look in the mirror and I looked at my life, the way that it was set up, it wasn't going to be set up for that because if I wasn't working, I wasn't earning. And I'll never forget, Jay, a good friend of mine asked me one of the most poignant questions that I've ever been asked. He said, Scott, if you get sick or injured and you can't physically train people and you can't physically work, how are you going to earn a living? And Jay, it scared me to death. Like I remember the feeling of the pit in the stomach type of feeling where I'm like, man, that was a gut punch. But it's exactly what I needed to hear at the exact time that this happened because it forced me to turn the mirror around and take a really good look at myself and say, where am I going with this? You know, I'm 33 years old. Like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I've been doing this for 15 years. I, I'm I need to go to the next level. So I started to think to myself, I sat down one day and I started looking at the demographics of the clientele that I had in person. And all of the clients that I worked with from a personal training standpoint were business professionals who saw me on their way to work early in the morning, on their lunch break, or on their way home from work. And I said, okay, if all of these business professionals are willing to take the time out of their day to come see me, whether it's before, after work, or during their lunch break, they have to be all over the country. They're not just in the Philadelphia area where my gym was. They have to be online somewhere. And that's when I asked myself the secondary question. What social media platform would most easily allow me to find these people? It wasn't Facebook. It wasn't YouTube. It wasn't Instagram. Wasn't TikTok because it didn't exist. It was LinkedIn. So I went onto LinkedIn. I changed my profile around, and this is now the beginning of 2013. Changed my profile, updated my banner. I started connecting with business professionals, started messaging, creating content, all this stuff. And within 6 months, I was able to match what I was making in person online doing these virtual workouts and nutrition plans for people. And I was blown away and I wasn't doing anything special. It was the law of numbers. It was connecting with the right people. It was hearing people's stories. It was me sharing how I can help them in the capacity that they may be struggling in and with. Now, this was never intended to be a business. But Jay, what I can tell you is some of the best businesses are created on the backs of those that need what you have most. When there is a gap in the marketplace, when there is a need for a problem that people are looking to be solved and you have the solution to that problem, you could have a business. So here's what transpired. As I was getting these results, I reached out to a couple of friends of mine that were also in coaching and consulting because that's what I was doing. And I said, I really think I found something here with LinkedIn. We were all using Facebook and it really was not getting the type of results that we wanted. I said, you should try this strategy. And I taught them what I was doing. And one friend in particular, after about 2 weeks, he got back to me. He shot me a text message and I'll never forget. His text said, dude, call me. So I called him and I said, what's up? And he goes, listen, he goes, I don't know what you figured out with this whole LinkedIn platform thing, but he goes, I have 14 appointments booked this week, qualified appointments booked this week. He goes, you should be teaching other people how to do this. I said, what do you mean I should be teaching people how to do this? He goes, listen, you teach people right now how to build healthy bodies. Start teaching people how to build a healthy business using LinkedIn. And that was it. That was all I needed to hear. That is what allowed me to put the pieces together between this problem that people were having with the solution that I created with LinkedIn. And that was the birthplace of not only how I was leveraging LinkedIn, but basically the company that I was able to start. And obviously now my wife and I run 3 companies together, all leveraged around in some capacity, some way, shape, or form, how to leverage LinkedIn to grow their business, their brand, and obviously their bank accounts.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago that when you were there at the fitness center, you're working 70, 80 hours a week, 6.5 days a week. What's your work day, work week look like now compared and contrasted to that?
It's a great question. So my wife and I are very blessed. We've worked very hard to get to where we're at right now. And over the past 7 years now of growing our companies, we're now working 3 days a week. We work Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Wednesday and Fridays are our flex days. It could be for just podcasting or just general appointments. It could be just us going out to lunch. And the days that we do work, we work from 11 to 4. So we work about 15 hours a week. We have a COO now. We have a CMO. We're in talks of bringing a CEO to help with one of our businesses. And we have 7 other team members that we now have on our team. So it's been slow and steady. It's that whole tortoise and the hare. We treat our business like a 401k or an IRA. It's the compounded effect. And that's why we wrote our book, The Feel Good Business Model, which was our newest release back in February of last year, because we want to share with people the things and the actions that we took to create the business that we have, because we want people to have a business that they love, a life that they love, and that work-life integration that they deserve.
Which, by the way, I want to let everybody know I ordered your book since being on your podcast, The Feel Good Business Model, Feel Good. I'm about halfway through the book. It's a phenomenal book. I recommend it to everyone, particularly if you're wanting to start a business or you're running a business and your business is running you instead of you running your business. I highly recommend the Feel Good book. So how can people learn about your LinkedIn strategies? And you got to tease us with just one tip. Maybe that tip is by sharing one of the most common mistakes that people that are trying to leverage LinkedIn, how they screw it up.
Yeah. So I'll say, I have, my website, people can find me at scottaaron.net. Also going to my LinkedIn profile. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's the easiest place to find me. And on my LinkedIn profile, you can actually take a free assessment. It's called the LinkedIn Scorecard Assessment. You just click on it and you can take it. It takes about 2 minutes. But here's what I'll say. I want to give you a place to start, but also talk about the things that you shouldn't do. And I'm going to start with the do nots. So the biggest mistake that people make on LinkedIn is they focus more on selling and pitching instead of building relationships. Now, if any of you watching this or listening to this have ever spent any time on LinkedIn, you've probably received one of those 18 paragraph long drunk-a-log verbal vomit messages when someone's trying to pitch you and sell you. We call it pitch slapping in the sales industry. And that doesn't feel good. No one wants to be pitch slapped, but everybody wants to be connected with. So if you're that person that, you're just literally spraying and praying and just trying to send as many sales messages out as you can, stop. Think about, and this is, my wife and I talk about something called the smell test. If you're crafting a message on LinkedIn and you reread it and it stinks, don't send it. Never send a message that you yourself wouldn't personally respond back with. So I'll leave that. That's one of the biggest no-nos. Now, where can someone start? The easiest place for someone to start is optimizing your LinkedIn profile. One of the biggest benefits of LinkedIn right now is, number one, it's a giant search engine. So basically everything is keyworded. Now, if anyone visits my website, there's a free gift on anyone that visits. It's scottaaron.net. It's my 6 steps to a perfect LinkedIn profile. So basically you click on it, it's going to give you this beautiful 6-page PDF, which is going to help you understand the core foundations of how you should optimize your LinkedIn profile. Because here's the benefit of doing this. When you have your LinkedIn profile set up the right way, meaning your headline section is full of keywords that your ideal target client or business ally would be searching for, that would then allow you to be visible in that search result, that would drive more people to your LinkedIn profile. It's going to give you that increased visibility. When you can have that about section written the right way, where you're sharing with people what it is that you do, how you do it, who you serve, and what makes you different, but also having that specific call to action. How can people learn more? One of the biggest mistakes that people make on their LinkedIn profile, you're not taking people on that customer journey. So leave your website in the about section. Leave your business email if you want people to email you there. But more importantly than all of that, make sure that you think about what are those keywords that people are going to be searching for. And not only do you want to put them in the headline section, you want to flutter them all throughout your LinkedIn profile, in the about section, in your experience section. And finally, within your LinkedIn profile, there's a section called personal recommendations. These are testimonials. This is social proof. If you want the words of others to speak for you, so you don't have to, you want to gather as many recommendations as possible. And it's very simple. You just have to ask. You have to ASK to GET. You have to ask in order to get. So if you want people to write you those written recommendations, you have to ask. So you ask people that you know, like, and trust. You ask current clients, current employees, past employees, business allies. And again, you can see this little certificate right back here for people that are watching. My wife made that for me. I now have over 500 written recommendations on my LinkedIn profile. And I don't say that out of ego. I say that out of confidence that I know anyone that's looking to take their business, their brand, and their presence on LinkedIn to the next level, you can read through the words of nearly 520 people who have said that that is exactly what I did for them. So not to overwhelm people, if you want to get started on LinkedIn, number one, don't spam message people. Be authentic in everything that you do, but more importantly, get that profile optimized, because the more visible you are on LinkedIn, the more visible your business will be on LinkedIn.
Great advice, Scott. Fantastic advice. And just one more time, let's share with everyone how they can connect with you. That's on your website, Scott Aaron. That's with 2 T's, I think, SCOTT.
Yep.
And 2 A's, AARON.net. That's a .net, not a .com. And also on your LinkedIn profile as well. Yes. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. Thank you so much for being transparent with your story and for sharing your experience with my amazing audience.
Jay, thank you. Honor and a privilege, and just obviously grateful to be here today and share my story with your audience. And hopefully it impacts one person to not give up on their dream and to continue moving forward and to be resilient. So thank you again.
You got it. God bless you. There you have it. Another amazing episode of Raising Private Money. I'm Jay Conner, the Private Money Authority, wishing you all the best. And so that we can continue to have more amazing guests like Scott Aaron, We really appreciate you liking, sharing, subscribing. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, click that bell so you don't miss out on upcoming episodes. And most importantly, really appreciate the 5-star ratings and reviews. I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Raising Private Money.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/moneyguide. That's jconner.com/moneyguide and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.